Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to our podcast. The episode for today, or the topic that we are planning to talk about today, is a big one. It is labor shortage in manufacturing and what to do about it. And I guess this year has been one that could be defined by uncertainty and complications all over the manufacturing sector. And one of the most painful points that we hear from leaders in manufacturing is there's this crazy labor shortage and we have no idea what to do about it. And I guess it only complicates with what's happening now in overall to the macro factors into the economy. But this single problem has still yet to be solved, and I guess companies are only beginning to understand the depth of it and to figure out what to do about it. So yeah, we have today with us again my usual co-host Yasin. What's your thoughts and some wisdom of nuggets about it?
Yeah, well, yeah, I've seen the stat, but I've also seen like in the actual um shop floor or like a procurement office how it looked like. And yeah, there's a big labor shortage like everywhere. Like especially in procurement, everywhere you look, they're hiring, and people are like leaving quite often. And manager are usually they're usually stressed out because they're always missing someone. They're always short staffed, and they are always like interviewing people, but like not no one. It's hard if everybody's hiring. It's hard to attract even like big executive like enterprise. Um, it was this big company who were in their office, and they were saying like, "Oh, it's the younger generation. They don't want to work anymore and stuff." And I was like, "Nah." I've seen everyone like it seems to be like all across the board, but also in the shop floor. Like it's very widespread, and uh, yeah, it's just everywhere. At least in Quebec, that's like to all of the company that I've seen in Quebec and in Ontario. It seems to be pretty widespread, but um, there's varying degree at which like companies were affected, and I found some that were less affected than others. But also like went to shop where it was super bleak. Other shop were like busting with and bubbling with activities, and the hiring was not an issue. So I think there's many factor coming into it. It's not just like there's not enough people. I think there's a few component to it, but for sure there's a currently labor shortage in manufacturing. Um, and if we don't do anything about it, it's just not going to be good in the future.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So yeah, let's break this one down as usual as we do. What's based on some of the stats that I saw, like over 60% said that because of labor shortage, they're not able to scale as fast as they were willing to scale. They have had to delay their shipments, delay delivery to their end customers. 60 more than 60% also said that they had to increase hours for their current staff just to compensate for what was happening because of not having enough people on the ground. And more than 50, almost 50% had to increase their wages or of the current staff to be able to retain them. What are, yes, and in your interactions, I would love to have both an objective and a subjective opinion on this. Like, why is it difficult to have talent, or why is it difficult to hire talent, especially in the manufacturing industry? What are some of the top reasons that you've seen? Yeah.
Yeah, very good point. And I've seen this like all of the stats that you see. I've seen to what extent it was happening. But like for objectively, I think the top reason is like wages and just the quality of the work. I think that's a big one, like, because if you crank up the wage by 10 times, you're gonna hire a lot of folks, no matter what the job is. And if you increase the quality of the life and work, that would be good also. But they can't. Most company can't just like jack up the price, the wage by 10 times, because they need to get like 10 times more job in order to do that, right? Even then, not necessarily, because the scale isn't exponential; it's really linear. So that's not a possibility. So what I've seen a company doing is that they improve the intangible. So for instance, some one of them like renovated their stuff and had a gym in the thing. Another company, like, people didn't work on Friday afternoon. Others were doing like very, very cool stuff where they were automatizing a lot of stuff, or people were spending like something like 20% of their time just like on robotic experiment and stuff like that. Um, yeah, people are doing this, and then some others were like leaning heavily on teaching, and then upskilling everyone, giving them their certification, all of this jazz. But still, it's very hard, right? And it has to do with like how these company are set up. Like, to get more job in, they need to have more people, right? Otherwise, they can't. Um, and these people need to be skilled in some sort of fashion, so it reduces the amount of people that they can have, and some of the perk they can compete with. So if someone was is checking like, oh, should I work at this company which is fully remote, or like I can go whenever I want, or this one where I have no choice but to come in because I need to do physical stuff, you can't compete with that. So you need to have people that are actually interested into this thing and not just like not very interested, stuff like that. So there's all of these components, and some of these company are in random places, random industrial sector, because it's strategic and stuff. One of them was an hour away from where Montreal, and I was meeting someone that lived literally next door to me. And I was like, wow, so you're doing an hour commute both ways every day? And he was like, yeah, but it's not too bad for now, but that's how it is, right? So in a week, 14 hours, yeah, sorry, 10 hours are just gone for this guy just in his car. um so if he get an offer a similar job somewhere else, um with less commute, they may think about it, right? But this company has no choice but to be there, because of their shipment and all of this stuff. So, objectively, I think it's the wage and the quality of life. And subjectively, there's a lot of stuff that people are doing and testing out. But the way they are structured make it so that they can't just do the improvement to attract more talent.
Awesome. All right. So let's break that down one by one. So one of the points you mentioned earlier, which I really want to sort of dive deep into, is the demographics, right? So now we know baby boomers and Generation X are receding from the labor force, and it's mostly millennials and Gen Z. And millennials and Gen Z, for those of you who don't know, is like people ranging from 18 to, I would say now, 40 years old. And they're becoming the most eligible candidates for this industry, while inherently they have this innate mistrust and misinterpretation, I would say, or misperception of this industry to start off with. And there was this interesting, I think I was reading it somewhere, like our grandfather's generation, their main focus when it came to work was mostly survival. So they would like take a beating, do whatever the employer does, and they would take it because for them it was just about surviving. Our father's generation was mostly about standard of living. They wanted to provide, again, good quality education and all of this basic stuff to the kids, but they would take anything from their employer, right? So if the employer, if a boss is really harsh and even physically harsh, they would still be okay with it, because for them, providing the standard of living was, I guess, the most important aspect. Since those two generations took care of that for us, or for millennials and Gen Z, um, uh, this generation doesn't care about those two things. It's mostly about quality of living, and it's mostly about how meaningful the job is. So even if, I guess, if sometimes even if you pay more to this generation, you're going to say, wait, is it really what I want to do? And is it really meaningful work? And is it really something that I aspire to do? And this becomes very difficult for employers to satisfy this kind of need, right? Because it's unprecedented. None of the previous generations was doing this. So I think that this is one of those topics. Like, if you look at the reality, this is what the majority of the workforce is. And if, as an employer, you're still in that traditional mindset and saying, hey, no, 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 I'm going to call four friends and we're going to figure this out, of who to hire, then best of luck. That's where, in the current market, that's what's going to happen. So what's your thoughts about demographics? And specifically, I would love to, like, learn from you, from your experiences, like, how can employers make this sector sexy for this generation?
Yeah. So on the first point, I think there's definitely a cultural shift on the what's, how to say it, what's a good uh, um, uh, kind of work environment. And I think it has, like, yes, it has to do with the culture, maybe the cultural aspect of the generation. But I truly believe it also has to do with, like, people are not dumb, right? They know these jobs that are super comfortable and that people that are skilled can get are available, and they exist, and the condition of work is pretty chill, right? So you think about, like, software engineer, data scientist, and, like, big FANG organization. That's it. That's, like, this is it. You get paid what, five, like, half a million a year. You can work, like, maybe what, 30 hours every week. Since you're so skilled, no one will fire you, and then you have a very comfortable life and a very comfortable job. Truly depending on your skill set. You wind this back, like, I don't know, 15 years ago, it was not heard of, right? It's not something that that really was in people's mind. I think that's it, that this is this had a profound impact in the in this cultural generation. And if it had an impact and people seeing that this was possible, and that the employer were treating their employee well, the way to retain this is to, like, show to the world, hey, look, we're doing this, we're doing that for the employees, and then other company follow suit, and then the whole market shift towards treating your employee well. So if you go into a company that doesn't treat you well, like, I mean, you're not gonna take it, right? You're like, okay, man, okay, for what, 10K more? Is it worth my time? I'm stressed right now. Nah, not really, right? So this, and we have much more choice than ever before, right? Like, a lot more, and the pandemic kind of showed it, because I remember, like, well, like 1 2 years before the pandemic, like, remote work and stuff. Um, it was hard to wrap our head around, and things like that. Some companies were doing it, but we were like, oh, those are special. But then the pandemic hit, and then it was a forced remote setup, right? Not the perfect one, but the forced one. But, like, if you look, we're past this a bit in time. It still stays, and it's just that the whole world is more connected now in terms of, like, where you can work. So I think this also had a profound impact about the level of tolerance of, I don't know, bullshit that the employees were willing to take. So what I've seen concretely with the manufacturing sector is they're trying to lean very hard on giving much more to the employees. So to do that, the best one I've seen were actually training the employees, just like upskilling them from no one, from like not no one, but like not um, no credential, just like someone that wanted to work on this and needed a job. They were upskilling them like crazy. And the idea is that if I do this, they will be like grateful and they will stay for a long time. So they went from um, using skilled labor to a little shop that creates skilled labor. That's an interesting trend because the best shop I've seen, and with the that had no issue in hiring. The shop was like busting and bubbling with activities. Um, the actual sorry noise. The actual president was a teacher, and he was bringing his student here. And at some point, he was hiring them, right? Um, and he kept like training them over time. So this was one aspect. Second aspect I've seen is that some job in manufacturing is just like straight up boring if it's the same thing and there's not like any kind of mental stimulation going. So what I've seen also is that the shop floor manager also relying heavily on innovation and research in this in whatever sector they're working on to stimulate intellectually their folks. So they have like improvement project that they bring in there. Anyone from their shop that is interested in this. I've seen a shop where they were doing like some pretty advanced robotic thing um, with their employees. They were trying to figure out how to do this automation so that the employee that had the worst job of like welding and cutting into that big vent didn't have to do it. So that's a trend I've seen. There was a shift from just like using skilled labor to actually like producing skilled labor in the manufacturing space.
Yeah, definitely. I think uh, it's also a factor of like introduction of technology that has sort of blurred the line between white and blue collars job. And I guess despite popular belief, based on our interactions with manufacturing, I wouldn't say manufacturing is that antique Victorian relic that the public considers it to be. There's some heavy investment that happens in technology within the manufacturing sector. It's a different conversation whether that investment pays off the same way as it should. But generally, most companies are embracing and evolving in technology, spending billions of dollars to adopt technologies that can help them move forward better. And I guess after all, somebody has to operate these tools, right? And must have the required skills, because technology cannot function in a vacuum overall. And I guess you need to have that kind of workforce, which is tech savvy as well as is willing to do that kind of work. And I think you gave a good, interesting example of like companies investing and actually potential future employees. I would say it's like an investment when you bring somebody who's not as skilled and you're trying to fill up that skill gap by investing this time into mentoring, into training this person. Um, how's how I would be interested to know how long were they running that project for, and how successful was it in both the short and the long term for them?
Yeah, we talked to the manager that was there, and he was running this for like it's been 3 months that he was running this, and they were making some headways. But he was saying like I'm always bringing stuff that is stimulating for my team because I need that. I need that to keep them engaged and to have them like want to come to work and stuff. So he had this running. That was like continuous improvement stuff. But this person, and I've seen this a bit in other industry, they were bringing jobs that might not like bring them the most cash, but were complex enough that it was a challenge for the team. And these were the good shops that I've seen. The other trend also I've seen that especially in space where like yeah you can upskill someone, but like it will take a while then to get up to speed, like some aerospace manufacturing shops, mostly, the manufacture aerospace component. One thing that I've seen is that they have no choice but to introduce robotics into their shop, right? Introduce robotic and like machines that they can do much more uh, with less personnel. So like one guy can, with a station, control three like super expensive machine that can do like super cool stuff. But there's only one guy that need to do that. Same thing for like a robotic component that just like replace some folks, or able to do the same thing for way longer. In time, there was like this machine that they put just a robotic arm that was connected to the CNC thing, and it was also doing the quality measurement and then calibrating the machine at the same time. So basically, you could run like 24 hours all the time, right? This is a trend that I've seen that is very interesting, because it's another way of fighting labor shortage by not having to hire anyway, right? But what I think it's pushing for is like even more skilled labor that you have to train because your thing might be custom. But it's a kind of more exciting. It's a bit more exciting to work in an environment like this. And the shop owner just has to deal with robots, not necessarily to like figure out and get like someone to do the boring jobs and bringing them in. I've seen that it's now something that people are heavily thinking about, automation. And it's funny because what 4 years from now ago we're like, robotic and automation will like steal our jobs. No one wants these jobs. It's not like everybody's banging at the door to get them. Like literally, people still have open thing, right? To get people, they're still interviewing, and then they are not able to get the folks in, and they still try to figure out how to make this robot tick arm work with their setup. I've seen none that worked, right? Almost none that were up and running, and it was just like all automated. They're struggling to make it operate because it's the only way for them to make their capacity higher, while trying to still hire folks. So that's another trend I've seen, in company that can't really upskill that much, or don't have the luxury of like waiting a long time until people are up to speed.
Definitely, and I think despite popular belief, the net result of automation has increased the number of jobs overall. Because again, somebody has to build this technology, somebody has to know how to operate it, somebody has to deploy it, implement it. So yeah, one interesting number or fact to look at is like, especially when we talk about Canada. Canada was suffering even before the pandemic with the labor shortage in this area. So I guess what the pandemic did is it only made it worse. And I would love to like touch a bit upon the point that you mentioned about people automation and people not wanting to do those jobs. I guess it's introduced a bit of shift in the market of when you introduce robotics. Now you, as an employer, you cannot pay a minimum wage plus adding some benefits there or some extra, because the type of talent you want to bring in is a different breed altogether. That's the one side of it, right? So employers need to sort of start thinking about how can they get this talent, how can they retain this talent without burning their financial savings or whatever financial status. And on the other hand, for employees, these industries are like, for them, it's like, hey, I'm not going to go and work for a grandpa industry or an antique industry which has no technology and it's just like still using pen and paper to organize stuff. So even for the employers or prospective employers who are like thinking about robotics or data scientists or people of those folks who we know Google, the FANG of the world is going to take them away from or the top talent. It's also a shift, and it's also difficult for them to make this judgment. Hey, I'm going to go and work for this manufacturing company outside of Montreal or Toronto. So yeah, well, what do you? How do you see this, first of all? And do you think it's a real problem? And what can both sides do to sort of offset the effect? And yeah, because at the end, I think a backbone of any economy is manufacturing. If manufacturing is happening in an economy, that's how the economy actually moves forward. So yeah, the shortage is gonna hurt the country in the longer run if we don't figure this out soon.
Yeah, but it's very interesting thought that you're following here. Um, but I think that was going to be all right. I think that it's not going to be that bad. Things will be fine. Just because of the fact that like some setup you can eliminate like a few people at once, and on top of this you can increase the capacity. So what it means is that's kind of the bottleneck right now is that like um, there's a lot of there's a labor shortage, right? So the people want to hire people um, not for fun, right? They want to hire people to increase the capacity in manufacturing to get more job in, because that's the other pressure there is. There's more jobs for the manufacturing companies. And this is the thing that was very interesting for me. And I was puzzled. I was like, can't you guys just like work more and then just get these job in so that you can grow the company and then just get more people? But because there's a rate limiting of hiring actual human being to do the job, they can't get as much job as they wanted, like the manufacturing company. So they can't increase their revenue. Um, so that was very interesting. And then if you can't solve the getting more labor, what you're going to do is just optimize the job that will come in. So you're going to specialize yourself, right? To be even more efficient with the labor that you have. If I foresee what's going to happen, there's going to be a super specialization on, especially in Canada, because in the US it's already started a while ago, of manufacturing shop. They will over specialize into one thing, which is a good thing because they're going to be able to do it for cheaper, much higher quality, faster. Everything will be good, right? So that would be one thing, because in this setup, then you can introduce robotic, and then you can like introduce things which, if it's always the same kind of component coming in, and then you can pump it out in the other way. There's a way to program this and figure a few robots to do the core setup manipulation. So that's one trend. And then what will happen is that since you can get like your thing set up in such a way that it's more automatic, technically you can increase the capacity because it doesn't have to be 9 to 5 with like some pause in the middle. They can work weekends and stuff. So that's kind of how I see the movement happening. So if you need to hire human being to be there and then to just like figure it out how to make the setup work, monitor it and whatnot, you can pay a high price. It doesn't matter, because you can both increase your capacity in a scalable fashion and get more revenue in because you have less people to handle. So yeah, I see that this will be the trend that will come in. I already seen it, the specialization, just because they could. Like one company told me, we don't need more job. We're like a year and a half booked, right? Doesn't matter. But we are willing to drop some of the job with some of our clients because we're not the right guy. Like somebody else could do it and it's gonna be like just fine. But we could bring in like these other type of jobs for us, which will maximize our revenue because we know how to do these things very easily. Our setup are made for that. So it's already happened. People are thinking about it, and then there's a pressure on both sides, both monetary to get more revenue in because the jobs are there, and the negative pressure of I can't hire anyone. So yeah, that's my that's my prediction.
Cool, cool. So yeah, I was hoping to cover this topic in today's discussion, but I think we've only touched the surface of like why this problem exists and what are the reasons. I guess it's a topic that will continue because it's an important one. I think, given the current scenario and what all is happening, it's an interesting topic. Also, one interesting thing is, like, I know some manufacturing companies, they've seen this shift in tech of like all layoffs and everything happening, and they're completely doubling down and hiring people from those who are getting let go. And it's an interesting tactic, especially if you want to get high class talent. They're using all those sorts of stuff. So yeah, we've got a lot to discuss on this topic, and I think we want to start get into the solution part of what needs to be done about this. So stay tuned for our next podcast. We're going to continue this topic over the next few episodes. Yeah, and thank you everybody for joining us today. Don't forget to hit subscribe, and yeah, have a wonderful rest of your day, week, evening.
Hey everyone, thank you, Ahmad.